Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to show you guys. This is the Benchmade Turret. Now, I don't think this model is super old, but it is kind of an oddball. I'm honestly not sure if it's even still in production. At the time of this video, Benchmade still has these in stock on their website, but in a different form. And you guys know that Benchmade's website prices, as is the case with most manufacturers, are higher than retailer prices. So I wouldn't recommend that you go there to buy knives. This version of the knife, I can't find it in stock anywhere. I can find some other serrated versions of it in stock on various retailers for a little bit more money. So I don't know. But I'm still going to cover this knife for anybody who is interested on the details if you're trying to seek one of these out, perhaps on the secondary market. I will link it right down below so that you can check out additional information if you so please. Thanks so much to the generous person who loaned me this knife for review. It will go back to him when I'm done. Thanks to my generous patrons who are supporting me. There's a link for Patreon right down below, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and measure it real quick. Overall length of the Benchmade Turret. It's not a small knife, not at all. 8.5 inches. Blade length 3.75, and then your cutting edge is coming in at about, it's a little over 3.5. They probably measure it at 3.5. It's a little over 3.5. Ouch, my finger. Let's go ahead and put the Ontario Rat 1 up against it for size comparison, and the Ontario Rat Model 2. So this is a big knife. It's definitely going to be, it's gonna have more presence than the Rat 1 for sure. Let's just do a couple more size comparisons up against the the Spyderco Para 3, and then finally the Benchmade Bug Out. This knife isn't quite as big as the Ergonomics. It's kind of got a Benchmade Freak, like a full-size Freak vibe, but it's got some different, let's say you cross the Benchmade Contigo with the Benchmade Freak, and this is kind of what I feel like you'd get. Action on this guy is very smooth. Now, the gentleman who loaned it to me did mention, that he has broken this in, and I can tell. I believe he's got his own edge on it, but it's fairly, similar to, I think it's almost exactly similar to where Benchmade's factory edge, the angle that it's at. So no problem there, but yeah, extremely smooth. The lock is not sticky. The action is actually very good. This is a very comfortable, large Benchmade knife to manipulate. It's got, I believe, their oversized axis lock, the same one that they put in the Ergonomics, so definitely heavy duty. He mentioned in his note that this thing has been all over and has been used pretty hard, pretty regularly. He does clean it, but it's definitely a user, so that's cool. And that's pretty common with Benchmade knives. A lot of people actually do carry and use them. They stand up. The axis lock does a good job. Of course, it's working with Omega springs, which on rare occasions do break. But for the most part, in my experience with Benchmade knives, everything holds up just fine. I've never actually had an Omega spring break. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it is pretty thick, definitely a little bit thicker than the Para 3. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. We can see here it is tall and long and pretty thick. This is definitely going to be a knife that might be cumbersome in the pocket for some people. Just depends on what you're used to. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So what are we looking at for materials? S30V, which is still completely and totally fine for this price point. S30V is not knocked down into a smaller price tier. That's in our imagination. CPM S30V is still a costly material for companies like Benchmade to purchase from Crucible. It's still a very, very well-balanced composition and is in no way inferior to the modern steels that we enjoy, that like whatever we put in the premium category today. I have kind of, in the past kind of fallen victim to the mentality that S30V is being pushed down in this lower capable. We've kind of hit the point where all steel compositions, right? They're just more or less of this or that, and we get more toughness and we get, more edge retention, but we get less corrosion resistance and this or that. There are definitely going to be steels that are better suited to specific things than S30V, but S30V, CPM S30V, remains to be one of the most well-rounded compositions out there for general use, and absolutely has business in this price tier. So, anyways, let's go ahead and weigh it here. Oh yeah, and the other materials, G10 and steel. But we do have skeletonization going on the inside. You guys take a look there. So they have knocked it down a bit. I'm guessing it still weighs something like 5.5 ounces. Yeah, pretty close, 5.82 ounces. So it's a big boy. It's a heavy boy. Definitely not, perfect ratios. Definitely not perfect balance. But do with that information what you will. If you're used to bigger knives, it might not be a problem. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. Sorry, I'm actually putting them away. They were still out from the last disassembly. As per usual, they are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I was looking for the T10. There we go, right there. And yeah, Benchmade's pivot, likely a T10. I don't have to check the rest of the screws because we all know they are T6 and there's a whole bunch of them. Yay! Really wish that Benchmade would move permanently to T8 and that they would stop putting so many screws in their knives, but that's not, we can't get what we want all the time. So make sure you have quality tools and a place to put your hardware. You should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here. I'm going to guess this is a maybe 135 to 140 thousandths. Maybe it's less. I don't know. Maybe it's throwing me off. Let's find out. Nope. I'm wrong. It's only 120 thousandths. So about Ritter Hogue or Griptilian thickness there. Not a big deal. Is that everything? I think we have done everything. Yeah, let's move into the meat and potatoes here. So this is a very comfortable knife. This is definitely an outdoor hard use knife. Benchmade does that really, really well. These run on phosphor bronze washers and are very smooth, so we won't have to worry nearly as much about debris getting into the pivot. The only weak point, as I stated earlier, the only weak point on Benchmade knives, the Omega springs. And while, there's always a guy in every comment section that's like, I had a Benchmade knife for one day and the Omega springs broke. Yeah, we do see that sometimes. That does happen, and that's a bummer. But if we think about the total number of Benchmade knives utilizing Omega springs right now in circulation versus the amount of times that we have read that before, legitimately, as a content creator who gets 80,000 comments per year, I'm dead serious, and reviews a ton of Benchmade knives, I have seen that comment maybe 20 times, maybe. So what I'm saying is that it's pretty rare. You do see it, right? I mean, it's a pretty delicate spring. It's going to happen sometimes. If that happens, if you buy a Benchmade knife and the Omega spring breaks, Benchmade will honor it as long as you weren't doing something stupid with it. You're still going to have to call them to figure out, what you got to do. But this is a Hogue knife that is utilizing the Able Lock, but it's also using Omega springs. This knife has been deployed every single day. Every review that I do, it's been deployed and put away, right? So that Omega spring, even though this knife is not getting a heavy workout, it's getting utilized. But that's not a Benchmade knife. Okay, how about the bug out? Because it is a Benchmade knife, and it's also a size comparison knife. So it's also getting worked out every single day, right? And even though it's not getting a heavy workout, that Omega spring is having pressure applied to it every single day. If you're going out and using your knives all the time, right, make sure that you apply a good amount of, lubricant to it, like Break-Free CLP. That's going to keep the spring from corroding and becoming weak, right? So there's a small chance, but in my experience, it's extremely, extremely unlikely, and this knife will likely continue to serve you just fine, right? So don't judge off of, a comment that you see here and there. It's just something that's going to happen. All knives have, small percentage chances of failing even right off the factory line. Anyways, yeah, this is very comfortable, very hard use oriented. The axis lock itself, how that bar sort of slides into place behind the tang of the blade, yeah, that's really going to hold up really, really well. Ergonomically, very comfortable. Jimping areas or even areas that look ergonomically unfriendly are very friendly. And this pocket clip from Benchmade is very, very good. This is arguably their best clip. Right alongside the one that's on the Benchmade bug out. These little, it kind of looks like the center of a rib cage. It offers a little bit of excess traction, not really a whole lot. I mean, the lines of the knife are going to lock you in just fine, and there's some nice jimping up here. This area right here is funny because it's like there's the ramp, and then it drops down behind the ramp, so I guess you're supposed to use it like this. I don't know. I kind of wish the spine of the blade would follow, or that this part would follow this ramp, but it doesn't. And you know what? It still works really, really well. This is the part of the knife that reminds me of the Contigo or the AFO 2, or there's a bunch of different knives that are kind of like that. Kind of like on the 710, right? Yeah, great. So anyways, the blade shape is a standard drop point blade. We've got a flat that carries out 80%, 75% the length of the blade, something like that. Looks good. Satin finish up top. We got a tumbled finish down here. Not super thin behind the edge, but it's thin enough. Day-to-day, outdoor use, or just general EDC, the blade's going to be just fine. This is a very typical Benchmade drop point blade. The thumb stud is a bit in the cutting path. So you're about right here. So if you're trying to cut, you know, it's already a ways from your finger. So if you're trying to cut straight down into cardboard, you need to clear that thumb stud, and you're looking at 3/4 of an inch. Not terrible, right? But something to consider. Edges, pretty knocked down until you get out to here. No, and you know what? Even there, it's pretty knocked down. The edge, his edge feels good, nice and bitey, but Benchmade's standard toothy edge has always been just fine. So there's not really an issue with the blade. The blade is pretty darn good. I don't really have a lot of, I mean, it's just kind of a standard, like we see the same kind of thing with Benchmade over and over and over again, so I don't really have an issue with that. Moving on here, this is a pillar construction, sandwich style. So we've got standoffs back here, full stainless steel liners. Rigidity on this guy, solidity, it's all there. This is G10, not FRN or CF Elite or Grivery or any of that other crap that feels like super cheap plastic. No, this is solid G10. So this knife has a very tanky, very capable feel to it. And, you know, even though oftentimes it is nothing more than just a feel, it kind of gives you, you know, it gives you confidence in the item, right? I mean, I don't like to squeeze a knife and feel flex. I don't like to, when I'm handling it, I don't like it reverberating or being, you know, like hollow plastic does. I just don't like that. This knife feels very heavy duty, and I appreciate that. There's a lanyard hole that's totally out of the way of the pocket clip, which is great. The pocket clip is going to carry the knife fairly deep, which I also like. Benchmade's deep carry clip is very good, and it's going to slide in and out of the pocket with ease. We've got a nice shallow bill here that should still slide over, you know, most pocket seam thicknesses. I don't know, is there anything else to talk about here? Not really. We have a nice big fat stop pin. I lost the word there for a second. And the lockout on this guy is completely and totally solid. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No pivot lash, that typical snap into place, which is really just tension created by the axis bar and the rounded tang of the blade. And then centering on this guy is right down the middle, so that's great. Yeah, okay, so how much is this knife? It's about what you'd expect. It's when it was available, it was 195 bucks. You can buy the black coated one for $235. It's right around the same mark as the Benchmade Super Freak in M4, which I honestly don't know if they still make. Now, inflation has occurred since then, but this still doesn't feel like a knife that should be $200. This feels like a, you know, there are definitely still American-made knives running around there with the exact same, you know, we're talking the exact same type of American manufacturing, the exact same type of finish work. A lot of times people go, it's just G10. I can get G10 on a Civivi. Civivi's G10 does not look like this. This is much more I mean, I know it's not that much more money, right? But there's more work. Like, it's not just one element. There's a lot of different elements that go into shaping everything and fitting everything together exactly right. And couple that with the fact that American manufacturing is much higher, right? We don't reduce things to just the material alone. It's the work that goes into it. So that is a dumb argument. It is not universally applicable. It makes no sense. That being said, this still feels a little high, even considering inflation, even considering the materials we're looking at, right? And considering where it is manufactured. There's lots of American knives out there that are manufactured exactly the same way, using the same, or, I mean, if we want to say M390 is substantially more premium than S30V, it really doesn't cost all that much more. In terms of, like, when companies buy it from Bowler, in that case Bowler, or if they buy it from Crucible, which would be CPM 20CV, it doesn't cost that, it costs all that much more. It's not like S30V is $50 and, you know, CPM 20CV costs $200. No, it's not the case, right? So there's still good competition out there, good American competition. It's coming in between 160 and 180. So this feels a bit high, but then again, Benchmade prices have always felt a little bit high. If you can find this guy for 190 bucks, yeah, it's okay. You know, I'd be shouting it from the rooftops at 150. 175 seems fair. The problem is that it doesn't look like it's in production. I don't think so. There's also not a whole lot about this knife that makes it stand out like a, wow, we have to have it. It just looks like another Benchmade knife, right? So it's cool. It's another Benchmade knife. It's definitely a user. Like, you buy this and you take it out and use it. I mean, it'll be like, it could be your only knife for 20 years, right? It's good. It's just another slightly overpriced Benchmade knife, and at the moment, it's either hard to get or it's discontinued. But again, for those of you seeking it out in the secondary market right now, some of this information may have been useful. I do appreciate the gentleman who sent this knife in for review. This will be headed back to you shortly. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives. They're either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.